at the flora around us. A pair of US botanists, Elizabeth Schussler and James Wandersee, coined this term, plant blindness, back in the 1990s. In short, it is an underappreciation of plants. Plant blindness results in underappreciation, as I said, of plants and a limited interest in plant conservation. The article went on to say that plant biology courses around the world are shutting down at an alarming rate, and public funding for plant science is drying up. And they also say that increased time with devices means that, to quote, nature deficit disorder, that is the harm caused to humans from being alienated from nature, is on the rise. So around the panel, what do you make of this? And I tell you what, Guy, I mean, you're in the media world. There are no more garden shows on TV. They're all health shows and health building.
And Maggie Barry's a politician now. It's bizarre, isn't it? I was going to say that I thought devices increased awareness of plants because everyone's on Instagram trying to take the best photo with the nicest tree. I actually thought it was the opposite. Maybe I'm wrong, but I totally agree with this. I so often forget to enjoy how beautiful the trees are just around our city. I'm so down with this, Victoria. You know, the fact of the matter is that when we used to have no shopping weekends, I can recall going, you know, bushwalking up the Maitai River or something like that. You don't do that these days. Not so much anyway, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't know if that's right. That might just be your lifestyle. But I must say, I'm obsessed now with the fact that there's no gardening shows, because I've suddenly hit that age where I've got a nice garden and I'm into gardenings because I'm sort of old and sad. And it's like there are no gardening shows, and that's, you know, upsetting. Bring back Maggie on
yes.
TV.
Yeah. Sorry, I laughed too hard at that. I'm sorry, that was my fault.
The other aspect of plant blindness is that, to quote, because plants barely move, they grow close to each other and often similar in colour, our brains tend to lump them together. Do you find that's true, Guy?
I zoned out. I'm sorry. I completely didn't hear what you said, what you asked.
Do you find that you tend to lump plants together? I mean, could you go out now into the street or into the bush and name a plant?
I'm always amazed. I think New Zealand loves its trees, eh? Whenever you walk out on a tourist trap bush walk, they'll have like a sign on every tree of what it's called. And I was like, who cares? But I think Kiwis do. I don't think you go anywhere else where we name so many trees and have so many signs on trees.
What about you, Victoria?
You stumped us both, Wallace.
No, you have, but I spend my life obsessing about weeds in my garden, if that helps.
There you go. Hey, on a final note, if you went to a concert and found that musicians played to a pre-recorded backing track, would you feel ripped off? Because this article here by one reviewer says it is happening a lot.
Yeah.
Choirs of harmonies mixed into vocals from invisible backing singers, singers that dance energetically, never out of breath, never missing a note. Would you feel short-changed?
Yeah, also my knee-jerk reaction is yes, definitely. But the number of, I've grown up in pop radio, and the number of Taylor Swift concerts and Beyonce concerts that I've been to that have been so good. And when you're there in the magic, you don't care.
You don't care?
You don't care.
What about you, Victoria?
I want a performance, not perfection.
Performance, not perfection. What a wonderful way to end the show. Meanwhile, plant blindness, one of the most photographed trees in New Zealand, are invasive willows in front of lakes in Otago and lupins in Canterbury because of the pretty colours. So there you go.
True.
Wonderful show. Fitted sheets, smoking, lots more. Where that came from tomorrow. Thank you very much. See you later.
Kei te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. On tonight's program, a devastated mother and grandmother speaks of her grief at losing a son, a daughter-in-law and 5 of her grandchildren in a horrendous car crash. Women's Refuge calls out Brian Tamaki and Destiny Church for behaviour it describes as arrogant, aggressive and downright ugly. A senior detective acquitted of sex crimes is interviewed by the police watchdog as it investigates a litany of complaints about how the original case was handled. Simon Bridges is confident in his leadership. We check whether the people of Tauranga share that confidence. And is there really a full-sized Black Panther prowling the South Island? Or are we just talking some vivid imaginations here?
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, ko Susana Leata with DNA. The grandmother of the sole survivor of Sunday's horrific car crash near Atiamuri says he's being surrounded with love from his extended whānau. The 9-year-old boy's parents and 5 siblings were killed when their vehicle collided head-on with an oncoming SUV on State Highway 1. The boy and another brother are all that is left in the family, and Sherilyn Potawa says the whānau has been overwhelmed by the love and support it's receiving. She says they're now waiting to return home with her 2 grandsons to Hawke's Bay.
They are both surrounded by a very big, loving family, close unit, who are waiting for them to return home in good time.
Sherilyn Potawa. The driver of the SUV, who was also killed in the crash, is being described as someone who was passionate about scouting and who will be sorely missed. The director of the Scouts Caving School at Waitomo, Warren Turnwald, says Jenny Rogers had been at a dinner at the school the night before.
And one thing she said to me on Saturday night was, I'm going to get paid for doing something that I've loved doing all my life. And that probably reflects her feeling toward the position and towards scouting in general. Yeah, it's a great loss, and she will be missed.
Warren Turnwald says that Jenny Rogers was a real go-to person if you wanted something done. The police have cordoned off a Christchurch street in response to an incident, but are so far declining to say what it is. A large number of officers, including the Armed Defenders Squad, are on the scene in the suburb of Phillipstown, and people are being asked to avoid Newcastle Street. A fire truck has been at the scene for 40 minutes, and St John says an ambulance is on standby. The police say they can't yet disclose the nature of the incident, but more information will be provided shortly. The Destiny Church leader Brian Tamaki says it appears he is being targeted by the Corrections Minister because of his faith. Calvin Davis has poured cold water on Mr Tamaki's bid to introduce his Man Up rehab program into prisons, saying he won't bend to threats of violence. Mr Tamaki yesterday tweeted a warning saying the church would visit inmates and cause revolts if Man Up is blocked. But the preacher says he was frustrated and wasn't being serious.
Why is Man Up being kept out like this? Why is the opposition coming from Corrections Minister Calvin Davis? I have got no clue about that, why he would. The only thing I can come up with is that he is discriminating against my faith.
Brian Tamaki says more than 3,000 people have been through the Man Up scheme. Authorities in the US believe they have foiled a plot by a US Army veteran to bomb a white supremacist rally in California. It's also alleged that 26-year-old Mark Domingo, who recently converted to Islam, was also planning terror attacks on Jews, churches and the police in revenge for the New Zealand mosque shootings. Special Agent Ryan Young says a potentially large-scale attack has been prevented.
Too often police officers and agents are responding to attacks on vulnerable groups, whether they're innocently attending a concert, attending classes, or praying in their respective houses of worship. It's not inconceivable that I'd be standing here today, beginning my remarks by offering condolences to victims of a horrific attack, but not today.
Ryan Young says the suspect was arrested after accepting what he believed to be a live bomb, which was delivered by undercover officers. The Ombudsman has found some inmates at Hawke's Bay Regional Prison are still being treated in a degrading way, such as being watched on CCTV when they're naked or on the toilet, and not being let out of their cells for exercise. An unannounced inspection of the prison was made in November after concerns had been raised about bullying and inhumane conditions. Overall, the Chief Ombudsman, Peter Boscher, says the prison has made significant progress in improving prisoners' safety, but it's been slow to improve conditions for those on remand or at risk. Methamphetamine remains the most commonly used illegal drug, according to results from the police's National Wastewater Testing Program. Between November and January, the tests showed an average of 16 kilograms of meth was consumed each week. And Assistant Police Commissioner Richard Chambers says that confirms the extent of the problem.
This is the best information that we've ever had to demonstrate illicit drug use across our country. And it will be helpful to us in terms of decisions that can be made about enforcement activity, about support to communities and treatment services and also education.
Richard Chambers says the average weekly amount of detected drugs had an estimated street value of nearly $10 million. A Picton couple claim to have seen the South Island's elusive so-called Black Panther. Juliana Kavanagh and her husband Warren Lewis were driving on State Highway 1 near Ward late on Friday night when the creature ran across the road about 10 metres in front of their car. Over the past 20 years, there have been about 10 sightings of what DOC and the Ministry for Primary Industries say are probably dogs or large feral cats. But Ms Kavanagh says she knows what she saw.
I kind of take a double take because it went from left to right, so it ran right in front of us, and there was some bush, on the left-hand side and grass on the right. It wasn't like we could see it run off. It came out of one place and went across to the other place, but it was the size of it, and it was running like a large cat.
Juliana Kavanagh. It's 5:05. The All Black lock Brodie Retallick will miss at least another 3 weeks of Super Rugby as he continues recovering from a wrist injury. He hasn't played since tearing ligaments in the win over the Blues a couple of weeks ago, and coach Colin Cooper now expects him to return against the Queensland Reds late next month. Retallick's injury has compounded a tough season for the Chiefs, who've also lost All Black fullback Damien McKenzie for the rest of their campaign with a serious knee injury that's also ruled him out of the World Cup. They've also been without All Black flanker Sam Cane as he recovers from a broken neck. If NBA side Oklahoma City Thunder intend trading Steven Adams, they're giving little away. In an end-of-season wrap-up, General Manager Sam Presti gave no hint of the New Zealand basketballer moving on, preferring to talk instead about developing his skills. The Thunder have the second highest payroll in the NBA, but haven't got past the first round of the playoffs for the past 3 years. Presti concedes Adams failed to deliver in the latter part of the season, but says he wasn't alone.
In the beginning of the year, he was dominant and playing so well, calling for the ball in the posts. He was really effective down there. He was putting people in the basket. He was rolling hard. He was doing the Steven Adams things that help you win games that don't always show up, those effort plays. Obviously, he didn't play as well. But that's not just him. That's a group thing, It's not just Steven.
Sam Presti. That's the news.
Getting the numbers.
Deer have been there. He's never asked for them before. But I do know that their stats are horrific, and we need to do something for our people.
Getting the numbers.
The old system where you turned up, knocked on a door, is actually a pretty damn good one. So unless you get that interaction and connection, you're going to have the same problems again.
And getting the numbers.
No, I could not get the support of New Zealand First. In this term of office, we did not have the numbers.
Count on us. Morning Report, weekday mornings from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, Mary Wareham on the spectre of fully autonomous weapons systems. And after 10, lessons in absurdism, eccentricity and farce with Canadian novelist Patrick DeWitt. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland, Coromandel Peninsula, Waikato, Waitomo, Bay of Plenty, Rotorua, Taupo and Taumaranui. Fine weather. Taranaki to Wellington, partly cloudy, a shower or two about southern Taranaki and Wellington, clearing by tomorrow morning. For Gisborne through to Wairarapa, including Taihape, occasional showers mainly about Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, clearing about Taihape and Wairarapa tomorrow evening. For Nelson, Bulla and Westland, fine, late cloud tomorrow in Westland. Marlborough, Canterbury and Otago, fine with a frosty start in places. Southland and Fiordland, cloudy with a few showers about southern coasts, and Stewart Island, sunny spells inland. Chatham Islands, occasional showers clearing tomorrow, and gale southerlies easing tomorrow. It's coming up to 9 minutes past 5. You're with RNZ National.
Thanks, Susanna. This is Checkpoint. I'm Lisa Owen. As you heard in the news, cordons are in place on a street in Phillipstown in Christchurch tonight, and the Armed Offenders Squad is in the area. People are being asked to avoid Newcastle Street. Now, our reporter Conan Young is at the scene and joins us now. Good evening, Conan. What can you tell us?
Hi, I'm just across from Newcastle Street on the corner of Glasgow and Chilham. That's where the cordon starts. I can see a couple of police vans that have been pulled up close to where we believe the police are focusing their attentions. I was told by a resident who's been evacuated along with all of those on Glasgow and Newcastle Street, and I talked to him and he told me, the police told him that there is a suspicious package in a house on Newcastle Street and that they have evacuated those streets. The police themselves haven't said anything so far about what's going on here. We do have the fire service was here
they had a drone which they had sent up to have a look at the site. They've now left with that drone along with their fire engine. There's still an ambulance just along from us on the scene. Just waiting to find out what's going on here.
Conan, can you put it into a little bit of perspective for those people who aren't familiar with that Christchurch suburb? Is it largely a residential street? How far away is it from Linwood and, say, the Linwood Mosque?
We're probably a couple of kilometres away from Linwood and the Linwood Mosque. It's the suburb of Phillipstown. Very residential. It's quite a busy road here at the moment. A lot of people coming home from work. The man I spoke to, actually the resident who's been evacuated, he was with his wife and 2 young children. So along with others that have been evacuated from these streets, not something they'd really want to come home to at the end of the day.
Thanks for that. That is Conan Young, who is at the scene of the police cordon there. As we get more details, we will bring those to you. The battle between Destiny Church and the government has reached boiling point today, with both sides firing barbs at the other. Destiny's leader, Brian Tamaki, has posted several vitriolic tweets about his failed campaign to get his Man Up rehab program into prisons, including one describing government criticism of him as political gang rape. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch.
We say you are valued, you are loved, you matter. We stand because we care.
Man Up, or Tū Tangata, promises to turn men's lives around. A 15-week program, a brotherhood. The Destiny Church leader, Brian Tamaki, wants to bring it inside prisons. The government ruling that out.
He's blown it. He's cut his nose off to spite his face.
The Corrections Minister, Kelvin Davis, unwilling to bend. He says Man Up has never made a formal application. And it seems any attempt now would be a waste of time.
Am I meant to bend to threats of violence? I don't think so.
Mr Tamaki yesterday posted a tweet warning his church would visit inmates and cause prison revolts if Man Up continued to be blocked from prisons. He followed that today with another tweet describing government criticism of him as political gang rape.
It's offensive on every level. If that's his form of Christianity, I don't think many people really want that. I just find it quite repulsive, his attitude, his preaching of hate. I just haven't fallen under his spell, and I feel sorry for the people who have. Their form of Christianity isn't my form of Christianity.
Brian Tamaki is defending his recent comments. He says his tweet about prison revolts wasn't serious, that he was frustrated and seeking attention. And he says his reference to political gang rape has to be read in context.
If it's been offensive, I apologise to people, because it's not meant in the way that they usually know the word. So with 3 senior cabinet ministers coming down on me like that, that's how I felt.
The tweets are a sideshow, Mr Tamaki says. They're not what matters. What matters, he says, is that Man Up could help reduce reoffending and change people's lives.
Why is Man Up being kept out like this? Why is the opposition coming from Corrections Minister Kelvin Davis? I have got no clue about that, why he would. The only thing I can come up with is that he is discriminating against my faith.
Mr Tamaki says more than 3,000 people so far have been through the Man Up program.
Judges are now having such confidence in Man Up, they are recommending Man Up as the program to go for some of the too hard basket or hardened criminals. We're having great success, and that should tell you a lot.
I hope they'll rethink that.
Mr Davis says he's yet to see any independent, reputable evidence that Man Up works. Atu iti whare parimata mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi, ko Craig McCulloch ahu.
Women's Refuge has cancelled a planned meeting with the boss of Destiny Church's Man Up program because of behaviour it describes as arrogant, disruptive and downright ugly. The head of Women's Refuge, Ange Jury, says she's seen no proof the Man Up program works, and she has serious concerns about its use.
We've had a couple of instances where women have reported that they were told that it was, if they would just do what they were supposed to be doing and stop provoking their partner, it'd be all good.
Just to be clear, in some cases you're aware of women whose partners were told that it was the woman's problem, that the woman needed to be more compliant in order to stop violence being meted out on them.
Yeah, that's what we were told. Yeah, we were originally going to meet with I can't remember his name, Kane, to discuss this, because we were also really concerned about some reports we'd had about facilitators running afoul of the law over domestic violence themselves.
Right, so that is the director of the Man Up program you're referring to.
Yeah.
So you had initially wanted to meet with him. What concerns did you have about people who were actually teaching this course?
I wanted to know what the qualifications were, what the vetting was, how did they go about ensuring that the program was safe? And that is something that we're apparently supposed to take on trust, but nobody else has that luxury.
So why didn't you end up meeting with him?
I was supposed to be meeting with him, actually I can't remember whether it was this week or next week, and the behaviour of Man Up members in Christchurch, followed up by Mr Tamaki's behaviour over the last few days. Waste of time. There is no I can't see any potential for anything productive or generative in that conversation.
So can you be a little more specific? When you talk about the behaviour in Christchurch, what are you referring to?
The group outside with the loud hailer outside Elnor, outside the mosque, talking about Christianity being New Zealand's religion, those sorts of things.
And in terms of Brian Tamaki's behaviour that you've referenced there, what do you mean specifically?
Particularly his comments today, where he likened the behaviour of government as a political gang rape.
What do you make of that comment?
It's just arrogant and destructive, and shows that he has very little care for others. It's really sad, actually. The man has the potential to influence an awful lot of people, and what he's doing at the moment is downright ugly.
Do you think that words can be violent?
Of course they can.
So that phrase, do you consider that to be verbal violence?
Oh, certainly. Most definitely so.
One of Brian Tamaki's tweets was about going into the prisons, and he was saying that they would plan private visits to inmates if they couldn't get in, and would cause inmate revolts in every prison. And then he goes on to say, "I'm warning you," which appears to be a reference to the government and Jacinda Ardern.
It's not a joke. That's the sort of thing that does incite violence, regardless of whether he thinks it's just words. It's not. People listen to those words.
He said he didn't really mean it in that way.
Rubbish. I don't believe that for a moment. He surely knew what he was saying. He uses words for a living. That's his job. He knows what he's saying.
How would you feel about the Man Up program going into our prisons? Is that a good idea?
Until such time as they actually start vetting their facilitators, start properly training their facilitators, actually demonstrate what their program is, no. Once they can do those sorts of things and do what everybody else does that wants to provide those sorts of services to very vulnerable people, then no. Until then, he just needs to stop.
Do you feel his words are the words of a man who is promoting non-violent action?
Oh, definitely no.
Why do you say that?
No. Those aren't the sorts of words that someone that is trying to convince people to be gentle, to be kind, to be loving would use. They're just simply not. They are aggressive and they are angry words.
Have you seen any proof, any statistical proof, any analysis or audit of this program which suggests that it is successful in achieving what it says it does?
No.
Nothing?
I don't believe that there are any. I hear tell that he can produce numbers, but numbers of what? Who's he talking to? Is he talking to the partners of women who have been through the program? Not that I've heard.
In terms of the people who teach these courses, what are your specific concerns about them?
Are they non-violent themselves? Are they able to be respectful, and are they able to be challenging of the sorts of behaviours that harm women and children? We don't know. It appears that the only training that's required is that they go through the program themselves. That doesn't sound like much of a training program to me.
And that is Dr. Ange Jury of Women's Refuge. We did ask Kane Warren on the program. He is the director of the Man Up program. We're yet to have a response. The invitation still stands. It is 20 minutes after 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. We're keen for your feedback on that. If you've used the Man Up program, if you've got knowledge of it, can you please share your experiences with us? We would love to hear from you. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. In fact, you can contact us about anything you've heard on the program today. Simon Bridges has emerged from today's caucus meeting saying he's confident he's leading a strong and united National Party caucus. But that hasn't managed to put speculation about his leadership to bed, with some MPs still unhappy about his style, some past decisions and his cut-through with voters. MPs returned to Parliament today from the Easter recess with Mr Bridges' leadership very much in the spotlight, amid speculation that Judith Collins could be keen to step into his shoes. Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson.
National is the largest party in Parliament with 55 MPs and is still polling solidly around the 40% mark for the party vote. But its leader Simon Bridges is not faring so well in the preferred Prime Minister stakes at around 5%. Making matters worse is potential rival Judith Collins polling at about the same level. Some MPs are disgruntled after his handling of the leak inquiry and the emotional junior staffer, discontent now being openly expressed to journalists. Mr Bridges says the clear message from supporters following the weekend's regional conference was the need for discipline and unity. National MPs arriving this morning were asked whether they agreed.
Let's see what happens, but so far Simon is our leader and caucus is very united.
By and large we're pretty united. It's hard being in opposition, and it's certainly hard being in opposition when you've had 9 years in government.
Well, we can always be more disciplined, I think.
Do you support Simon Bridges as the leader of the National Party?
Yes.
Former leadership contender Amy Adams was asked about support for Mr Bridges.
Yeah, I think the majority of the caucus is very clear that we support Simon and want to carry on with the job of being here, which is not internal squabbles. It's being the best opposition we can be.
Do you think that the caucus needs a reminder about unity and discipline today?
Well, if anything's being discussed in the media, that by definition is not where we want to be, but I think the majority of the caucus want to get on with doing the job that we're here to do.
A long-time colleague of Judith Collins, Anne Tolley, had this to say.
I've worked with Judith for a long time. We've had our ups and downs. She was a very competent minister and she's a very good political operator, but I think that, I've said it before, she polarises people. Because she's black and white, and unfortunately where you win Treasury benches is in the grey areas and in those voters who are in the middle.
Heading into this morning's caucus meeting, Mr Bridges would not say if he'd raise his leadership.
I'm confident in my leadership. I think I'm doing a good job, and I'm about to go into caucus as I do every single Tuesday.
He repeatedly said he trusted his colleagues but refused to specify Judith Collins.
I trust my colleagues, but I'm not going to get into these semantic silly games in the media.
For her part, Ms Collins was telling reporters he had no reason to distrust her.
I've been in this business long enough. I don't get personally hurt by little things like that.
Should he trust you?
Of course he should. I'm a very hard-working member of caucus.
And does she support Mr Bridges as leader?
Well, of course, because he's the leader of the party, and that's what I always do. So he's the fifth leader of the party that I've had, and I've supported every single one of them, and I'll continue to do so.
After the 2-hour caucus meeting, Mr Bridges emerged saying he was confident he had a strong, united caucus, and he was less reluctant to talk about trust and Judith Collins.
Yeah, I trust my caucus, I trust Judith Collins, and look, I've set her a task, which is to get out there and go at it, and she does that attack role really well.
The Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern was asked if she had any advice for Mr Bridges.
No, I'm not going to comment on National's leadership challenges. It's not an issue for me. It's for them. I tend to stay out of other people's politics.
But shortly after, in question time, she couldn't resist a jibe in response to a question from Simon Bridges about Kiwi Bill targets.
Mr Speaker, if the member wishes to put on notice a question, as I noticed that MP Judith Collins does when she usually asks these questions, then I would be happy to give the specifics of the exact numbers as they are today, Mr Speaker.
With only one supplementary, is it already too hard for the Prime Minister?
Raising leadership issues today. Bold call, Mr Bridges.
But it may yet be Judith Collins who gets the last laugh.
Do you know, nothing much worries me. I'll just get on and do my job.
From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jane Patterson.
A grandmother who lost her eldest son, his partner and 5 grandchildren in Sunday's horrific car crash near Aotea Muri says a warm and loving whānau will look after her 2 remaining grandchildren. One grandson survived the crash and is in hospital, and another was with his grandmother when news of the 2-car crash that killed 8 people came through. Sherilyn Portawa spoke to media on behalf of her whānau at Waikato Hospital today. Our reporter Andrew McRae was there.
Sherilyn Portawa was surrounded by members of the Kororia Luke Portawa whānau as she spoke about the tragedy that's taken the lives of 7 of her family members. She remained stoic while whānau members clutched each other in silence. Reading a statement, she said losing loved ones has been devastating.
No words can fully describe the agony, the anguish of whānau, that our whānau are experiencing this time.
Mrs Portawa says the family were on their way home to Tokoroa when the crash happened on State Highway 1 on Sunday morning. She says she was waiting for them to arrive.
And the sole survivor is our 9-year-old grandson, who is recovering quite well. He's been in surgery, midnight surgery, and it's been very successful. So he is on a speedy recovery, but a long journey for him.
She says the whānau is waiting to return home with her 2 grandsons to Hawke's Bay.
They are both surrounded by a very big, loving family, close unit, who are waiting for them to return home in good time.
Sherilyn says the whānau has been overwhelmed by the love and support it's receiving.
We would like to thank the whānau, friends, all work colleagues of my son, school teachers, friends, neighbours, for all their condolences and their heartfelt aroha, prayers, thoughts.
She asked for privacy and respect in the coming days.
I ask everyone to whānau and friends and family everywhere to please continue to pray for the Luke, Kororia and Portawa whānau as we grieve, mourn our loss, which will be a long journey for us.
The 8th person to die in the crash was the sole occupant of the other car, a long-standing member of Scouts New Zealand, Jenny Rogers. The organisation says their colleague was a private person who didn't like the limelight. The night before she died, Jenny Rogers attended a dinner at the Scout Caving School at Waitomo. The school's director, Warren Turnwald, describes her as a go-to person who could solve any problem.
She would sort something or put you on to somebody else. So she was always good and passionate about scouting, long family history in scouting. So she was very keen on promoting it, working with the youth.
Warren Turnwald says Ms Rogers was in charge of various National Scout schools, including caving.
It's the second time she had come up to be our guest at the final dinner. So we chatted throughout the evening and I gave her the opportunity to talk to the kids a little bit about the other national schools that Scouting has.
Mr Turnwald says she'll be sorely missed.
There was so much more to her than just the role that she worked on, and And one thing she said to me on Saturday night was, I'm going to get paid for doing something that I've loved doing all my life. And that probably reflects her feeling toward the position and towards scouting in general.
The scouting movement and two families now in mourning after the tragic accident. In Hamilton for Checkpoint, ko Andrew McRae-Tene.
The Crown has opened its case against a former high school teacher accused of indecently assaulting 7 boys. Benjamin Christopher Missy Swan is charged with 10 counts of committing an indecent act on a young person. He denies all charges. Jordan Bond was in the High Court in Auckland and filed this report.
The Crown claims that Benjamin Swan, who's known as Benji, sexually offended against 7 young boys when he was alone with them. The 55-year-old held a teacher's certificate for more than 30 years and taught at a number of Auckland schools, the last of which was Otahuhu College. He's no longer teaching. In the Crown's opening statement, prosecutor David Stevens says the boys' claims were strikingly similar.
The Crown says the similarities between all of these allegations are not a coincidence. They are not the result of collusion. The allegations are similar because the defendant did similar things to each of the 7 boys. The touching happened.
It's the Crown's case that Mr. Swan told the boys to remove their clothes, either down to their underwear or completely nude, before the indecent acts occurred. Mr. Stevens said 2 of the boys felt confused about what happened, and one thought Mr. Swan would be angry if the boy told anyone. He says one boy initially kept it to himself because he was embarrassed about what had happened.
But they all boil down to the same act: inappropriate touching of a child's private parts by an adult male.
Many of the details of the allegations are suppressed, including why Mr. Swan was alone with some of the boys in order to protect their identities. The police launched an investigation after one of the boys told his mother, which led to 6 more complainants being identified. Mr. Swan denies the allegations. His lawyer, Sam Wimsett, said there was no sexual contact with any of the complainants.
And it all sounds very bad. And if it were all true, it would be very bad. Mr. Swan, Ben Swan, denies the allegations 100%. And what else can a teacher in his position do?
He told the jury Mr. Swan's innocence would become clear to them over the course of the trial.
Now, you will use your life skills, your knowledge of people, your knowledge of teenagers, and your common sense to spot the lies in this case.
The jury trial before Justice Duffy is scheduled for 3 weeks. Atuiti ko te mātua mo te hōtaka o te ahiahi nei, ko Jordan Bond, aho.
Coming up on Checkpoint on RNZ National, is Wanaka ready to jump on board with plans to have jets landing there within 6 years? Licence to krill, the beluga whale and the mystery harness. Was it a spy? And after 6, what do voters in Simon Bridges' electorate make of the national leader's woes? We would love to hear your feedback, so get in touch. You can text us on 2101, you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or send us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. But for a change, let's go to the headlines with Susanna.
The grandmother of a 9-year-old who survived a weekend crash that killed 7 other members of his family says he's surrounded with love from his extended whānau. The boy and another brother are all that are left in the family, and Sherilyn Potawa says the whānau has been overwhelmed by the love and support it's receiving. She says they're waiting for the pair to return home to Hawke's Bay. Scouts New Zealand says the senior staff member killed in the crash had a deep passion for scouting. Jenny Rogers, who was 52 and from Wellington, was the movement's General Manager Lower North Island and its National Schools Manager. Scouts New Zealand says her bright smile, loud laugh and passion for life would fill the room wherever she was. RNZ has been told the reason 2 Christchurch streets have been evacuated is because of a suspicious package found at a house. The police were called to the suburb of Phillipstown just after 3 this afternoon and set up a cordon. A resident from one of 2 evacuated streets told RNZ the police had informed him a suspicious package was found at a home on Newcastle Street. The police have yet to say why the streets have been evacuated. Brian Tamaki says it looks as though the Corrections Minister is targeting him because of his faith. The leader of the Destiny Church has been trying to get his Man Up rehab program into prisons. He says he has no clue as to why the program is being blocked. US authorities believe they've stopped a plan by an Army veteran to bomb a white supremacist rally in California. It's also alleged that 26-year-old Mark Domingo, who recently converted to Islam, was also planning terror attacks on Jews, churches and the police in revenge for the New Zealand mosque shootings. Special Agent Ryan Young says too often people are responding to attacks on vulnerable people, but not today. The Ombudsman has found some inmates of Hawke's Bay Regional Prison are still being treated in a degrading way, such as being watched on CCTV when they're naked or on the toilet and not being let out of their cells for exercise. Those are the headlines. Our next news and weather update is at 6.
Thanks, Susan. Let's get down to business, as it was with Madison Reedy. Madison, a business confidence survey.
Another one. I know you love these, Lisa.
ANZ.
That's why I brought this to you today.
What's this one show?
This one shows that business confidence has actually remained pretty low in the month of April. So the ANZ Business Outlook survey hasn't actually moved from last month. Now in March it fell 7 points, so it's remained at that low level. So a net 38% of businesses still expect economic conditions to worsen over the next year, and confidence particularly fell further in the retail and residential construction sectors. Now this is because of all of the same reasons that we've heard before. They're worried about the increasing cost of doing business and their supposed inability to be able to pass all of that increased cost onto their customers. Now ANZ's chief economist Sharon Zollner, she says that this sustained low level in business confidence suggests that the economy is going through a bit of a soft patch. Now when you compare this with consumer confidence that we received late last week, that was pretty flat too. That rose just 1 point. But it is worth noting too that the results of this survey, most of the businesses' opinions were submitted before a capital gains tax was canned by the government.
That's interesting, isn't it?
That is interesting. So a lot of economists are saying that we may see a bounce in next month's business confidence survey, given that businesses notoriously disliked the idea of a capital gains tax. Maybe now that that's off the table, they might be feeling a bit more optimistic.
Yeah, I look forward to the comparison of those outcomes. Department of Internal Affairs, you say, has issued a company warning. What is that all about? Which company?
This company's called Denton Morrell. It's certainly not a well-known company. It's a sort of trusty consultancy firm. Now, the DIA, the Department of Internal Affairs, regulates anti-money laundering and the Countering of Financing Terrorism Act. Excuse me, today it publicised that it's issued a formal warning to this company called Denton Morrell, and this company has clients all around the world, but it is based in Auckland. Now, the DIA is basically calling it out for failing to do due diligence on its customers, which it's required to do under this anti-money laundering legislation. It also says it hasn't been monitoring its clients' accounts or international transactions. Now, the DIA did an on-site physical visit to this company, and it found inconsistencies in some of its customers' wealth records and its sources of funds. So the DIA has told this company to rectify these issues immediately and implement an anti-money laundering program into its business. The DIA, we should note, is in the process of checking up on firms. So obviously anti-money laundering laws have been around for a while. Financial institutions like banks and also casinos have been party to this legislation for a while. But only in July last year were lawyers, accountants and real estate agents brought under this law too. So now the DIA is checking up on them. It says it's checked up on about 60 of them. And when I asked them last week how they felt about what they've seen in terms of compliance so far, they didn't necessarily tell me how they felt or if they were pleased, but they did stress the importance of compliance. And we should note too that dealers of high-value goods and the New Zealand Racing Board come under the law next, so they're due to fall under the law in August.
So is this the first one that we're aware of the 60 that they have audited or checked up on, that has got a ticking off?
Yeah, this is the first formal complaint that's been publicised. We don't know if the DIA has actually issued other formal complaints in the background that they just haven't told us about. So this is the first one that they've publicised. So obviously they were quite ticked off about this one in particular. But there have been a couple of prosecutions led by the DIA in courts that we've seen over recent years.
OK, what's been going on the markets today?
The NZX Top 50 Index rose just 1 point tonight to close at 10,013 points. The New Zealand dollar is buying at 66 $88.6 US cents, 94.6 to the Australian and 51.5 British pence.
Thanks, Madison. Madison Reedy with our business news this evening. The police watchdog has interviewed a detective accused of sex crimes as part of an independent investigation into allegations against him, but it says the outcome could be months away. In February, a jury acquitted Detective Inspector Kevin Burke of 2 charges of sexual violation by unlawful sexual connection and 2 of indecent assault relating to 2 women he met in the course of his work as a police officer. But the assault allegations and a list of complaints relating to the way the case was handled are being reinvestigated by the Independent Police Conduct Authority following complaints from one of the women. We can't show her face or say her name for legal reasons, but this woman doesn't want her concerns to be invisible too. In 2017, she complained to the IPCA about Detective Inspector Kevin Burke and the police handling of the investigation into her sexual assault complaint.
I'm the second complainant, the first to come forward though, in 2017.
And how many and what charges related to you in this trial?
2 sexual assaults and 1 sexual violation after I was stabbed by my partner in 2002.
A summary of the IPCA complaint details the woman's allegation that in 2002 and 2003, Detective Inspector Burke used his position as a police officer to try and initiate an unwanted romantic relationship.
My complaint is that Kevin Burke had met me through a domestic violence incident and then later came to my house while I was dealing with court issues and sexually assaulted me at my home 3 times.
Kevin Burke was stood down from the police force in 2017 and an employment inquiry was put on hold while the criminal case ran its course. For privacy reasons, the police won't comment further on that. The IPCA has confirmed it intends to address the woman's, quote, original complaint regarding 2002 and 2003. That is, the alleged assaults.
I know that Kevin Burke is going to be interviewed in the IPCA complaint.
The IPCA has also confirmed it's now interviewed the detective and is currently completing what it describes as a few follow-up inquiries. At trial, Kevin Burke denied this complainant's allegations outright. 3 of the 4 charges Mr Burke was acquitted of related to her, but those jury verdicts have little bearing on the woman's complaint to the police watchdog. Here's Victoria University law expert Professor Yvette Tinsley.
The IPCA is essentially akin to a commission of inquiry. They've got the same kinds of powers as a commission of inquiry, so we're not looking to a criminal standard of proof. It's more the civil approach.
When you say it is at the level of a civil approach, what is that in a layperson's terms?
So if we're talking about proof itself, then we're talking about balance of probabilities rather than beyond reasonable doubt.
But to be clear, even though a jury has found this person not guilty, it's still within the IPCA's scope to come to a different conclusion.
That's right.
The woman's complaint to the IPCA includes allegations police officers failed to contact another alleged victim for several months, despite having her details, and poor police communication, including making contact with her mother via email and CCing the mother's boss into that email. She also claims she was pressured to dump the victim advocate she had chosen, Shannon Parker, who runs a website that highlights allegations of police misconduct.
I had no issues with that, and certainly the complainant, like I said, needs as much support as she could get.
That's Louise Nicholas, long-time victim advocate, who fought her own battle with police after going public with allegations she was raped by serving officers. The police won't comment on specifics, but they say they recommended Louise Nicholas as a support person for the Burke complainant because of her specialist expertise and knowledge, and they say she does a tremendous job providing support for victims. Did you at any point suggest to the complainant that she stop using Shannon Parker as a support person?
No, definitely not.
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
While the woman was initially happy to have Louise supporting her, she later became concerned the lines between Louise Nicholas and the police were blurred.
I thought that she was just a support person for me, but it seemed that she was contacting me on the request of the police. So, in my view, Louise Nicholas is more an advocate for police, not for victim support.
Can she still do her job effectively as a victim advocate?
I don't believe she can, no. I don't think you can when you're working beside the police and taking instructions by the police, when you should be using your own initiative for, what you do as an advocate for sexual assault victims. I think that she should be there more for the people and the victims than sort of being instructed by the police what to do.
Louise Nicholas utterly rejects this.
I work alongside police in these cases, but I don't work for police, and they know that.
Why do you think she has this impression that you were working for the police?
Yeah, to be honest, Lisa, I don't know. And I guess, stuff can be taken out of context, especially through emails. So that's why it's better to do face-to-face or talk on the phone, but have somebody there to help her understand what's going on, what the process is, where everything's up to. I could imagine it does get taken out of context.
Louise Nicholas's job as National Sexual Violence Survivor Advocate is government funded. In their statement, the police reiterated Ms Nicholas does not work for them. Rather, her role is to provide a high level of support to the complainant throughout the investigation. Louise Nicholas says she even called out a senior police officer on the case over poor communication with the woman. But the woman who alleges Kevin Burke sexually assaulted her has also complained that Louise Nicholas was given information about her case before she was.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, she did know more about my case than I did. She was told that there was shitloads of evidence in Kevin's notebooks that they retrieved.
Louise Nicholas sees that differently too.
I was informed about that, but I naturally thought that police had already spoken to her about that. So if they hadn't, then that's an issue with the police. I was only doing what I needed to do for her.
Could it be that why you thought that you were getting information after the complainant had received it, that you were in fact being told things before she was?
I always assumed that she was being told information and then it was passed on to me, and to make sure that she was okay with that information and understood it.
Police say the welfare and privacy of a complainant is always the priority. And they say Louise Nicholas was only provided with high-level information, not specifics relating to the case, so she could support the woman. The woman also says the police were given contact details for another potential complainant in the Burke case, but failed to take immediate action. And what did they do with that information? Did they contact the person?
No, they didn't. No, they didn't contact her until 5 months later.
What do you think of that failure to contact the victim straight away? What do you think was going on there?
I don't think they wanted other victims to come forward. I think they just wanted to deal with my complaint and leave it at that.
The police have conceded while they claim to have been in touch with a second complainant, they hadn't, due to, in their words, a lack of clarity and communication. That is, two people working on the investigation, each believing the other had made contact with the woman. The police findings have been forwarded to the IPCA.
Police could have done better, as in communication-wise, and we pulled them up on that.
Louise Nicholas again.
But all in all, I think they, the fact that police got it to court, and the fact that the process through the court actually happened for these women, they absolutely believed them. The Crown believed them, and for me, that's just the sad reality of how our adversarial system works, and they didn't get the justice they deserved.
Meanwhile, the IPCA says it's conducting fresh interviews and analysing material from the police investigation, as well as trial evidence and transcripts. Its final report could be some months off. For the complainant, the process has been long and arduous, and it's not over yet.
Overall, not very good. Not very good at all. There's just so many issues that had arisen from my complaint that it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? It makes you wonder what other victims go through.
And we've just got an update in from the police in Christchurch. This incident in Phillipstown, the suburb there, and a property on Newcastle Street. The police say that a 33-year-old man has been arrested and is currently being interviewed by the police in regards to the incident. The cordons are in place and they're still asking people to avoid that area, please. Houses on Newcastle, Glasgow and Harrow Streets are being evacuated as a precaution, they say. And a New Zealand Defence Force team, an explosives ordnance disposal team, I suppose in layperson's term, a bomb disposal team, is on site. Fire and Emergency New Zealand and St John's are also there. There is also a no-fly zone in the area, so they're asking you to avoid Newcastle Street. We'll update you as more information comes to hand. It is 10 minutes away from 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Do get in touch about anything you've heard on the program today. Let us know what's on your mind. You can text us on 2101, you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Wanaka could have jets landing at its airport within 6 years as part of a proposed new airport model for the region. But some say decisions have been taken without proper consultation. The Queenstown Airport Corporation has released new plans following last year's backlash to its proposal to double flights in and out of Queenstown. Wanaka Airport currently has no scheduled commercial flights, but is used as a recreational flying hub. But is the community ready to jump on board? Reporter Tess Brunton spoke to residents to find out.
Airline pilot and long-term Wanaka resident Terry Hetherington says it feels like the future of Wanaka Airport has already been decided.
We live in a democracy. The community have a right to be consulted honestly and openly about the development prospects from the onset. And what we're being presented with now is we're already halfway down the path and we're being told what is happening. Where is the consultation in that?
Queenstown Airport Corporation says it won't develop a large international airport, but plans to have a handful of domestic flights with turboprop and narrow-body jets. But Wanaka Community Board member Rachel Brown says the community is nervous about that kind of expansion.
People are, on the whole, pretty scared. I guess nobody really wants a major airport in their backyard and jets overhead. Like, there is no ideal place for that. There's always going to be somebody living close by. And so I think there is sort of quite a lot of fear and speculation.
She says residents want to have their say, but are either told they've already had their chance or told to wait until the master plan is unveiled later this year.
On one side, QAC will say they've had a lot of community consultation and they've got a website available for, putting ideas in and making discussions. And yet on the other side, people will say, hey, we haven't really had an opportunity to be heard and say, what we want, because we haven't really seen any specifics.
Terry Hetherington says residents need to raise their voices about what they want for the future of Wanaka.
But our communities have to consider how many is enough when it comes to tourists. And just by letting the airport drive that decision or trying to look after the perceived demand isn't working in the best interests of the community as a whole.
3/4 of the airport is owned by the Queenstown Lakes District Council, and Mr Hetherington says he's concerned the council hasn't consulted on any expansion plans. The company says it's unlikely the flights will be underway before 2025, but Rachel Brown says she's concerned Wanaka's infrastructure may not be ready to handle the influx of people that regular flights could bring. She says the focus should be on sharing the load with other regional airports like Dunedin and Invercargill, utilising what's already there. Lake Wanaka Tourism Chief Executive James Helmore says it's still early days and he's concerned about infrastructure.
Queenstown Airport have said there's in the region of 300,000 to 400,000 passenger movements into Queenstown Airport that can be attributed to Wanaka-based people or visitors. And that's encouraging. I mean, that will get people off the road, over the Crown Range, for example, but it actually provides more convenience and greater connectivity to our local community.
The Queenstown Lakes District Council and Queenstown Airport Corporation declined to comment. The company posted an online update saying the community can provide feedback online or in different engagement sessions to be held throughout the year. The master plans for the Wanaka and Queenstown airports are expected to be revealed late this year, with development possibly stretched out to 2045. For Checkpoint, Tess Brunton, TNA.
Licensed to krill for your ice only and live and let dive. Just some of the headlines being generated by a story that's caught the world's imagination. A beluga whale wearing a harness has been approaching fishing boats off the coast of Norway. What exactly it was doing is still a mystery, but there is speculation that it may have been involved in spying or even carrying a missile. Here's the BBC's Richard Hamilton.
The beluga whale was first spotted last week near the Arctic island of Ingoya, about 400 kilometres from Murmansk, where Russia's Northern Fleet is based. Local fishermen were about to cast their nets when they saw the creature swimming between their boats. They initially thought the whale must have got tangled up in some fishing gear, but when they looked closer, they saw it was wearing a harness.
Det sånne klips på dette ganske lenge, og vi fikk det jo ikke til. Vi kom her til klipsene, men det har vi klart å nå den fremste spennende og åpne den.
A Norwegian diving team leapt into the icy water and managed to remove the harness, which had the words Equipment of St. Petersburg, as well as a holder for a camera. The whale then swam off. Martin Biu from the Norwegian Institute of Marine Research was asked to examine the video footage of the whale.
From the video, you can very clearly see that the whale is actually approaching the fishing boats, and this is not something that you generally see, and it's very clear that this is a trained animal. You can see the whale stick its head above the water and open its mouth as though it was begging to get some reward for something that it has done, and this is a typical behavior of a trained animal. I suspect that this animal has just gotten away from the trainers, that it got lost and swam into Norwegian waters. It could be a defector whale. I don't think it's crossed the border to do any kind of operation. I think it's simply an animal that got lost.
Training whales and dolphins for military purposes has quite a long history, according to Helen Scales, a marine biologist at the University of Cambridge in England.
It's certainly something that got going in the 1960s. The US have still got, I think, a military training program for marine mammals, and they've been put to all sorts of uses. We're talking about combat dolphins, which sounds very exciting, and sea lions are the two species that are generally used for doing all sorts of things like detecting underwater mines and helping to defuse them. So I believe after the Iraq War, there was quite a lot of mine clearance conducted by dolphins.
Interviewed on Russian radio, a military spokesman played down Norwegian concerns about the beluga whale, but he did not deny that it could have escaped from the Russian Navy. He said they have a facility at the Black Sea port of Sevastopol where they train dolphins to solve various tasks, from analysing the seabed to protecting stretches of water, attaching mines to the hulls of foreign ships, and even, as he put it, killing foreign divers.
And that was the BBC's Richard Hamilton. Before we get to some of your feedback, the police hold serious concerns for a Northland woman called Bridget Simmons, who has been missing now for over 2 months. They are wanting to hear from anyone who has information about her whereabouts or who has seen her. 42-year-old was reported missing by her family on March the 6th. They say it's unusual for her not to be in contact. She was dropped off at the countdown on Kamo Road in Whangarei by family at about midday on February the 23rd. They are making inquiries to help locate her. Anyone that's seen her, there's a suggestion that she may have come to Auckland at some point. They'd like you to get in contact. Bridget Simons, and a picture of her is on the police website, I believe. Let's get to some of your feedback now. We've had a lot of it in regards to the Man Up program. Let's start with this one. The person says, I have a great deal of sympathy for Brian Tamaki in his stoush with Calvin Davis. Most of the programs that Corrections already has are failing, so something else is needed. Anecdotally, I have heard a lot of prisoners have been helped by Man Up, and that feedback is from long-time prisoner Arthur Taylor. On the other hand, though, Lynn says, we're feeding Brian Tamaki's ego by giving him airtime. His violent verbal rhetoric has no place in New Zealand prisons. I worked in women's prisons for years, she says. I wouldn't have him anywhere near those places. We should stop mentioning his name name and his cause. This one on the interview we did with Dr. Ange Jury on this subject. They say that she's got sensible, clear, calm analysis of the Man Up program. Where's the evidence and proof that the program actually works? Tamaki seems to think that what he has to offer corrections doesn't require scrutiny and should be automatically approved because he is who he is. Tamaki seems to lack the maturity to understand that there are always consequences for our actions, says this person. And Martin has been in contact with quite a long email. Thanks, Martin, for the effort you've put into it. Just to read some of it, he says that Brian Tamaki would be one of the most pure form examples of narcissistic personality disorder. He says listening to him is like listening to Donald Trump. And Martin agrees with Ange Jury that he knew exactly what he was doing and the political agenda he was setting off for himself. He says that Brian Tamaki has made no attempt to explain exactly how Man Up is meant to work. And he has more comments. We don't have time to read the whole thing out. And they say he just is saying that he agrees with the interview that Ange Jury has given. And this one from Brian, actually no, we'll have to get to that a bit later. News now.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui ko Susana Leātawa tēnei. A man has been arrested and houses on 3 streets were evacuated late this afternoon after a suspicious item was reported at a property in the Christchurch suburb of Phillipstown. Cordons that went up around Newcastle Street have now been taken down and people in the area who were evacuated are now being allowed back. The police say a 33-year-old man has been arrested and is speaking with officers. The Defence Force Explosives Team, Fire and Emergency, the police and St John arrived on the scene shortly after 4:30, but the all clear has been given now. Women's Refuge has cancelled a meeting planned with Destiny Church to discuss concerns about its Man Up program after a series of controversial actions by the church it calls destructive and ugly. Earlier this week, the church picketed one of the mosques that was a target of the Christchurch terror attacks, and the church's head, Brian Tamaki, used the phrase gang rape in describing political opposition. The head of Women's Refuge, Ange Jury, told Checkpoint the meeting had been to ask about what vetting and qualification Man Up tutors have after women had raised concerns.
We've had a couple of instances where women have reported that they were told that if they would just do what they were supposed to be doing and stop provoking their partner, it'd be all good.
And Jury says this week's actions show the church's attitudes are dangerous. The Health Minister says ongoing strike action by junior doctors is disappointing, given that urgent facilitation talks are due to begin next week. In Parliament this afternoon, National demanded to know whether David Clark will step in and help resolve the doctors' dispute with health boards. Dr Clark replied that what's needed is a resolution that will work for both sides.
And let's not forget that there is already a union that has settled with the DHBs, which has 750 members, the Specialty Trainees of New Zealand. And it's also worth remembering that DHBs have settled pay rounds with nurses, with midwives, with allied health and with clerical workers already.
The Health Minister, David Clark. The government is urging parents and caregivers to stop using a type of cradle that's been linked to the deaths of more than 30 American babies. Earlier this month, the US Consumer Product Safety Commission announced a recall of Fisher-Price Rock and Play sleepers, in which infants have rolled over while unrestrained or in other circumstances. A Trading Standards spokesperson, Martin Ruston, says though few sales have been made in this country and no fatality has been reported, people who've bought the cradles should contact Fisher-Price's parent company, Mattel, for a recall and a refund.
It's a reminder to manufacturers, I guess, that when they're producing products, and it doesn't matter what they are, they have to have due regard to how consumers might end up using them, and to make sure that they take that into account when it comes to the design, construction, warnings, and so on and so forth.
Martin Ruston says babies should be put to sleep on a firm, flat surface. Some prisoners at Hawke's Bay's regional prison are still receiving degrading treatment, including being watched on CCTV when they're naked or on the toilet. The Ombudsman has found they were also not let out of their cells for exercise. This was after an unannounced inspection of the prison in November. A previous inspection had raised concerns about bullying and inhumane conditions. Anusha Bradley reports.
Overall, the Chief Ombudsman, Peter Boscher, says the prison has made significant progress in improving prisoners' safety, but it's been slow to improve conditions for those on remand or at risk. He says prisoners in the Intervention and Support Unit, or ISU, suffered degrading treatment or punishment, including being seen on camera when they were naked and not being given their minimum legal entitlement of an hour's exercise in the open air. Inspectors also found vulnerable prisoners were inappropriately placed in cells without toilets or water when the ISU was full. Corrections has been asked for comment. Ko Anusha Bradley-Ho.
A forestry company has been fined $70,000 for polluting a bay in the Marlborough Sounds. Laurie Forestry, which operates around the South Island, has been convicted in the Blenheim District Court of 2 charges under the Resource Management Act. The company managed a pine forestry block in South East Bay and Pelora Sound. In May 2017, the Marlborough District Council was alerted to a large amount of sediment being deposited in the bay from the block's skid site, an area where harvested logs are processed. The poor design, construction and drainage of the site led to 2 slips and a plume of sediment extending about 400 metres into the bay. A council spokesperson, Gina Ferguson, says she hopes the convictions send a message to others in the industry. Disruptions to bus services are expected from next Monday as rest break legislation takes effect. Under an agreement reached between the government, councils, unions and bus companies, drivers must have a 10-minute break every 2 hours and a 30-minute break every 4 hours. The Transport Minister, Phil Twyford, has announced a new land transport rule giving companies more flexibility about when they can allow the breaks. But he says there will still be disruptions.
We can't give an ironclad guarantee. This is a very complex and challenging thing that we're dealing with. I think that most of the bus services will be able to accommodate a break for the drivers without any trouble. A good proportion of them will require some rejigging, and there may be a small number where services may be disrupted.
The Transport Minister, Phil Twyford. It's coming up to 6 minutes past 6. Cricket Australia says a social media post from international player James Faulkner implying he was gay was a joke that's been taken out of context. Faulkner posted a photo on Instagram saying he was having dinner with a boyfriend and added the hashtag Together for 5 years, which Cricket Australia says was misinterpreted. Faulkner later edited the post, but not before he was congratulated by former and current teammates on the initial post. The Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic captain Casey Korpua admits her side is battling low self-confidence before their ANZ Premiership netball match against the second-placed Southern Steel in Hamilton tonight. The Magic have been beaten convincingly by the Steel twice this season and lost by 21 goals to competition leaders the Pulse. The Brisbane and Kiwis halfback Cody Nikorima won't play in Thursday's National Rugby League match against South Sydney while he considers his future. Nikorima has been linked with a move to the Warriors that could have him playing for the Auckland club by the weekend. Brisbane appear to be ready to let Nikorima go as he's struggled for form, although Queensland State of Origin coach Kevin Walters says he'd be disappointed if Nikorima left.
The Warriors are desperate to try and find a number 7, but he's a Broncos junior. He's come through the system there, through the 20s and then into first grade. So I think deep down he would dearly love to stay.
Kevin Walters. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, a window on the world of South Africa's born-free generation. Those born after the abolishment of apartheid in 1994. Our largely libertarian thinker Eric Crampton tells us why the government was right to scrap the capital gains tax, but also right to build more houses. And Trevor Reekie rounds off the month with a Worlds of Music show featuring the Irish-Mexican supergroup The Gloaming on Nights with me, Brian Crump, from after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland, Coromandel Peninsula, Waikato, Waitomo, Bay of Plenty, Rotorua, Taupo and Taumaranui. Fine weather. Taranaki to Wellington, partly cloudy, a shower or two about southern Taranaki and Wellington. clearing by tomorrow morning. For Gisborne through to Wairarapa and Taihape, occasional showers mainly about Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, clearing about Taihape and Wairarapa tomorrow evening. Nelson, Buller and Westland, fine, late cloud tomorrow in Westland. Marlborough, Canterbury and Otago, fine with a frosty start in places. Southland and Fiordland, cloudy with a few showers about southern coasts and Stewart Island, sunny spells inland. And Chatham Islands, occasional showers clearing tomorrow and gale southerlies easing tomorrow. It's 6:08. You're with RNZ National.
Thanks, Susanna. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. We just want to update you on the incident in Christchurch. Police have released a statement saying that they have located a package containing a suspected explosive device and ammunition at a vacant address on Newcastle Street in Christchurch. A New Zealand Defence Force bomb squad team is there and they have rendered the package safe. The police say a 33-year-old Christchurch man has been arrested and is assisting police with inquiries. The police are saying a big thank you to nearby residents and members of the public who were affected by the evacuations, thanking them for their patience. The cordons are now being stood down. So just to repeat, they found a package there that contained a suspected explosive device and ammunition at that address on Newcastle Street in Christchurch. Authorities in the US believe they've foiled a plot by a US Army veteran who wanted revenge for attacks on Muslims around the world, including the Christchurch mosque shootings. They allege 26-year-old Mark Domingo, who recently converted to Islam, was planning to bomb a white supremacist rally in Southern California at the weekend, with the aim of causing mass casualties. Jane Lanhee-Lee reports.
Pressure cooker bombs, 3-inch nails, and a lot of ammunition were all part of a plan, according to police, by a former U.S. Army soldier who served in Afghanistan to wreak havoc at a rally in Long Beach, California, organized by a white nationalist group over the weekend. But well before 26-year-old Mark Stephen Domingo could attack, he was tracked by law enforcement for nearly 2 months, baited with what he thought were live explosive devices, and arrested on Friday after he scoped out the event venue. U.S. Attorney Nick Hanna and local law enforcement detailed their operation to bring him down, which had targets well beyond the rally.
This is a case in which law enforcement was able to identify a man consumed with hate and bent on mass murder and stop him before he could carry out his attack. Mr. Domingo said that he wanted to kill Jews as they walked to synagogue. He wanted to kill and target police officers or attack crowds at the Santa Monica Pier.
Domingo was charged with providing and attempting to provide material support to terrorists. In a video posted online, he said America needs another Vegas event, referring to the mass shooting in 2017. He also said he would pledge allegiance to ISIS if they were in America. And following the mass shooting attack on mosques in New Zealand last month, he posted, quote, "There must be retribution."
He allegedly purchased several hundred 3-inch long nails to be used in IEDs as shrapnel, specifically because the nails were long enough to penetrate the human body and puncture internal organs.
Hanna said Domingo was extensively watched and had no co-conspirators, and there was no ongoing threat to Southern California. The announcement comes 2 days after a gunman opened fire in a synagogue in the San Diego area, which left 1 person dead and 3 wounded. A suspect identified as John Ernest was taken into custody in the shooting.
And that was Jane Lanhee-Lee reporting there. If you're a regular listener of Checkpoint, you'll know that we have been wanting to talk to victim support about the money donated for the victims of the mosque shootings. We just wanted to know where it was going, how much has been handed out. A lot of you have been getting into contact asking what's happening with the money that you donated. They have repeatedly refused to do an interview on Checkpoint. We've asked a number of times and they've said no each time. They have released a statement though, and they say that $3 million has been distributed to the victims and families of those affected by the Christchurch tragedy. They say 2 rounds of financial support have already been given to 47 families of those who were killed and 80 people who were hospitalised. And they say in the last few days, 53 injured people have come forward or been identified as needing help. In terms of the distribution of the money, they say of the $10 million raised, a $15,000 lump sum was paid to families of each each deceased person on the 18th of March. $5,000 of that came from the Ministry of Justice Victim Assistance Support Scheme. A second payment of $15,000 was made to the families on the 18th of April. Also, injured people received $5,000 3 days after the incident, and a second payment of $8,000 on the 18th of April. And they're working out how to distribute the rest of the money. We'll keep asking for an interview. We hope to get one for you. Simon Bridges has survived to fight another day as National Party leader, but despite emerging from today's caucus meeting with the pronouncement that he's in charge of a strong and united National Party caucus, he's failed to douse speculation that Judith Collins could challenge his leadership. So what do voters in Mr Bridges' Tauranga electorate make of what's going down at the Beehive? We sent our reporter Nita Blake-Pearson and camera operator Claire Easton-Farrelly there to find out.
Hi Lisa, yes, I'm here in Tauranga's city centre, right in the heart of Simon Bridges' electorate, which he's held since 2008. But in the last couple of major polls, Simon Bridges has been last for the preferred Prime Minister stakes, or at about the same level as his colleague Judith Collins. The party vote has also been hovering around 40%. So I've been here gauging his constituents on whether Simon Bridges is the right person to be leading the National Party.
I think it's best for National for him to lose the leadership.
Why do you think that?
I don't think he's a strong leader.
Who would you pick to replace him?
I would pick Judith Collins.
I think he just needs to get in touch with society, real issues in society a bit more. Delve into what the people what's relevant to the people, as opposed to the other person, they're very much in touch with society.
Do you think Simon Bridges will retain the National Party leadership?
Of course, yes, definitely. I'm a National Party supporter.
There have been rumblings that Judith Collins might be looking for that top job.
I've seen that clip this morning and I don't think she is.
You think that he's got a safe spot there?
Definitely.
I think he's got the skills. He's definitely got the skills, but he doesn't come across as a strong leader. Yeah, and I think that would be his... that would be something that he would have to work on, I think.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot more people that could possibly be more experienced than him. He has quite a bit of experience with himself, but he seems kind of more of a very stereotypical kind of Tauranga, like more he's getting old, he's kite. I won't say stuck up, but like he's the old school.
He has no personality. He doesn't pick decent issues to argue about. He focuses on trivial things like fluffies in the prison and that sort of stuff. I don't think he has the support of the population in this country.
Does he have the support of his local Tauranga electorate?
I wouldn't actually know about that. I think a lot of people don't have a lot of confidence in him. I've not spoken to anybody here who actually says, yes, he'd be the man.
I quite like the guy as a guy, but he's doing his best, put it that way. I think he's doing his best, but I think there's some strong women there coming through, which I wouldn't mind seeing taking his place probably.
There have been rumblings that Judith Collins might be interested in that job. Do you think she'd be a good fit?
Personally, I probably wouldn't think so either, but it'd be an interesting fight to see them go at it.
So that's the view from voters here in Tauranga today. Not great news for Simon Bridges as he stares down leadership rumblings and low personal ratings in the polls.
That was Nita Blake-Pearson. She was in Tauranga with camerawoman Claire Easton-Farrelly gauging the views of voters there today. Early estimates are that more than 2,000 elective and other procedures have been scrapped this week because of the junior doctors' strike. Members of the Resident Doctors Association are into their second day of a 5-day strike over their expired employment agreement. In Parliament today, the Health Minister David Clark once again refused to step into the dispute. But doctors on the picket line say the government's involvement is now absolutely critical. Joanna McKenzie reports.
On day 2 of the strike, Dr Clark was asked in Parliament about the impact it's having on patients. He says hospitals are reporting no unexpected issues and people are still turning up for work.
Approximately 38% of house officers and 72% of registrars have made themselves available for work this week, and DHBs are advising the public that if they need to attend hospital for acute or emergency medical treatment, they should do so.
Dr Clark says while precise figures won't be known for some time, he had an early indication of how many procedures had been deferred.
I am advised that preliminary planning estimates are that 1,513 elective procedures and 776 other procedures, such as elective angiography, have been deferred. People are missing out on planned care as a result of the strike, and that's why I'm urging both DHBs and the RDA to make the most of facilitation.
Stand up, fight back! But members of the Resident Doctors Association on a picket line at Auckland City Hospital today say the Minister must step in. Dr Maple Goh, who works at Middlemore Hospital, says Dr Clark's response to doctors picketing his office yesterday was a huge letdown.
He put out a really disappointing poster that said that he was disappointed with the doctors, which is huge hypocrisy considering we're disappointed with him that he hasn't stepped in at all. And it should be in his power to make the DHB sort this out. We've been trying to sort this out for 12 months now, and it's just appalling that David Clark has been sitting on his hands.
Vice President of the RDA, Dr Catherine Foster, says the government got involved in other contract disputes, so why not this one? She says the strike is important because the doctors don't want hospital chief executives to have the final say over working arrangements.
The problem with the CEOs having the final say is we are a vulnerable population. We're dependent on the DHBs for our training and for our capacity to continue to learn and work. If we let the DHBs have final say, we have no recourse over changes that may be damaging to our lives in training and our lives outside of the hospital. We can't then go to a different employer. We're a captive audience.
Dr Foster says part of the issue lies with a lack of trust between the doctors and the DHBs, and that's been a problem for a long time.
We've had many years of a systematic erosion of trust, and it comes from our side, from the DHBs, saying one thing and doing another, and that's why the protection of our union is so important and why we're so desperate to hold on to it, is because we can't trust the DHB.
The doctors on the picket line say support from the public and their senior colleagues remains strong. Meanwhile, the DHB spokesperson, Dr Peter Bramley, says the strike is unreasonable and unnecessary because facilitation talks are due to start on May the 9th. For Checkpoint, called Joanna Mackenzie-Ho.
Experts are working to verify a video posted by Islamic State featuring its elusive leader. If confirmed, it would be the first sighting of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in 5 years. The 18-minute video shows a bearded, middle-aged man who praises the Easter bombings in Sri Lanka and promises a long battle is yet to be waged. The BBC's Ramjam Kumali has this report.
He's not been seen in public for 5 years, but this video of the leader of the Islamic State group showed Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in defiant mood. In the propaganda video posted on the group's Al-Furqan media network, he vowed to seek revenge for IS's loss of territory. When al-Baghdadi last appeared on film, IS held a huge area of 88,000 square kilometres, roughly a third of Iraq and Syria. But by 2016, they were in retreat. 2 years ago, the city where the Caliphate's creation had been declared, Mosul, had been lost. And by the end of March, the group lost its last town, Baghouz, in Iraq. The motives behind the release of this video seemed clear. It was a way of showing that the leader of IS is still at large, despite the resounding military defeat the group has suffered in the Middle East, and the fact that there is a $25 million bounty on his head. Al-Baghdadi also claimed that the Easter Sunday Sri Lanka attacks were carried out as revenge for the fall of Baghouz. During the 18-minute video, al-Baghdadi acknowledged the huge loss of land, but warned that there will be more to come from IS, and his group are ready to fight what he calls a battle of attrition.
That's Ramzam Kumali reporting there, and the video has prompted the US to reiterate its determination to defeat Islamic State. The State Department says it's clear the fight against IS is not finished, despite its loss of territory in Syria and Iraq. People are being warned to stay away from a Facebook group called Enu Now, which is urging its followers to live stream themselves drinking alcohol. The page, administered by New Zealanders, has more than 16,000 followers, but many say they have seen extremely harmful content on it, including physical abuse, drink driving, and even parents giving alcohol to their young children. Te Aniwa Hurihanganui has more.
So yeah, it's just me, the animals, and beer, of course. I have beer.
A live video posted to the Inu Now Facebook page just last week shows a woman drinking bottles of beer alone in her dining room for 46 minutes. That's the point of the page. People are encouraged to drink and go live. And it's a hit. An average of 10 live streams are posted there a day, and on weekends it's much more. Facebook user Scotty Royce found the page through a friend and says what he saw there shocked him.
And then I just started to see all this crazy stuff, you know. Underage kids were drinking on school days, people driving drunk, and just the same people every day on there drinking. And then I just started to see kids in the background, you know, while the parents are going live.
It got worse.
There was a mother who was giving her, the kid would have only been about 2, and she's giving the baby a sip of a 7% can of vodka.
Mr. Royce is one of many Facebook users warning people to stay away from the page, and he's calling on Facebook to take some responsibility for the harmful content it hosts on its site.
The funny thing is, I mean, when you play music on a live, they jump on you straight away if it's copyright, do you know what I mean? And they'll shut your live down. But yet people can go on there and drink and drive and abuse their kids. I really do think Facebook need to start monitoring all this sort of stuff.
He's not alone. The government has urged Facebook to regulate the live streaming of videos on its site after a gunman filmed 17 minutes of the Christchurch terror attacks. NetSafe has received several complaints about the page. Its chief executive, Martin Cocker, says it's yet another example of how harmful the live streaming service on Facebook can be.
If you are promoting, irresponsible alcohol culture, then that is harmful. And yet another use of live streaming services that is not positive.
A description on the Inu Now page says people who are negative or post things that do not relate to the purpose of the page will be deleted. But Facebook user AZ doesn't buy it, saying the admins of the page do not remove harmful content or followers who abuse the rules.
The domestic violence and things that were starting to come up, they were starting to get shared more than anything else on the page. The people who admin that page to get a few extra 100 likes and things seems to be all they're worried about. I'm surprised Facebook hasn't shut it with the amount of things that have gone through there.
He's urging the police to monitor the page.
I really do think they should at least monitor it in some cases. It gets shared fairly quickly. Good old social media, when people spot it, they're quick to put the people on blast. It's not like they try and hide these videos, so these videos do come out very easily.
The police won't say if the page is on their radar, but they urge anyone with concerns about possible illegal activity to let them know. For Checkpoint, I'm Sianiwa Hurihanganui.
Rumours of a South Island black panther have resurfaced. A Picton couple claim they saw the mystery beast on the prowl in Marlborough on Friday night. It's one of about 10 reported sightings of a large black cat in the South Island since the 1990s. But MPI aren't ruling out a case of mistaken identity. Katie Todd spoke to the couple as they revisited the scene of the sighting this afternoon.
It was late last Friday night, and Juliana Kavana and her husband Warren Lewis were making their way along a coastal section of State Highway 1 near Ward. She'd just slowed for a corner when, bounding out of the dark and into their headlights, came something that set their hearts racing.
It was a big, huge, not a feral cat, not a cat. It was a great big thing with a head that was a cat and a body sleek, black, and a very long black tail. It was about the height of my knees, maybe a bit taller than my knees. The tail was really, really long. And it was in full flight as it was running across. It was about 10 metres from us in the headlights.
Ms. Kavana pumped her foot on the brakes, and the two immediately turned to one another in awe, wondering if they'd seen the same thing. She grew up on a farm, and Mr. Lewis is a keen hunter, but he says neither had laid eyes on anything like it in their life.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't a dog, and it wasn't a pig, and it wasn't any of those. It was a big cat. No, it was amazing. What did we just see,
Ms. Kavana was not aware of the South Island big cat rumours, but a call to her father sent her into research mode. He told her this thing has been seen before. The mystery of a South Island cat dates back to 1992, when it was first spotted lurking near the Ashburton River mouth. There's been sightings from mid-Canterbury to Bluff to Kaikoura. on farms, in forests, and once in a photograph, strolling across a frozen lake. Australian cryptozoologist Tony Healy has even been writing a book about the mystery big cat, which has been variously described as a panther or puma. But he notes all descriptions are strikingly similar. A dark creature the size of a dog with a large head and a long tail. Ms. Cavada hopes one day the sightings will add up to solid proof.
Eventually they will. Somebody will find one, or somebody will shoot one, or somebody will cage one, or something will happen. But MPI, I believe, already know there is poo and markings and droppings and things. They will have this information. I'm 110% sure that they will have this, and they will have verified that there are big cats wandering around the South Island in New Zealand.
But in a statement, MPI were less hopeful.
We have previously received calls over many years about similar sightings in the North and South Islands. MPI has investigated photographs, footprints and hair, scat and faeces samples, and in each of those previous cases we've concluded the sighting to be that of either a dog or a large feral cat.
And so too in another statement with the Department of Conservation.
Over the years, DOC has received anecdotal reports of large cats in the Mackenzie Country area. Our biodiversity ranges have caught a few big ones, but no mountain lions to date. The biggest was not much smaller than a Labrador.
Nevertheless, Ms. Cavana and Mr. Lewis count themselves as lucky for seeing what they saw. They say it may have been less than 4 seconds, but it will stay with them for life. For Checkpoint, ko Katie Todd, tēnei.
We've already had feedback on that story from Chris Malcolm, who reckons he was driving between Wanaka and Dunedin and saw the black cat. 2006 or 2007, he reckons. OK, so send us your sightings with photographic evidence. If we get enough of it, we'll make a gallery on our Facebook page. Catch you tomorrow.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. A package containing a suspected bomb is found at an empty house in the Christchurch suburb of Phillipstown. Women's Refuge cancels a meeting with Brian Tamaki to discuss his Man Up program after a series of what they call destructive actions by the Destiny Church. The Health Minister is disappointed at ongoing strike action by junior doctors, with urgent facilitation talks due to start next week. And a forestry company has been fined $70,000 for dumping sediment in a bay in the Marlborough Sounds. Those are the headlines. Our next news will be at 7.
Take the pulse of the day's news every weeknight at 10.
We were told that the Airport Corporation wants to bring 7.1 million people into the Queenstown Wanaka Airport.
Lately with me, Karen Hay, is your late night eye on the latest headlines and the people who are making them.
Yeah, well, that's